The Prime Minister of the UK is not popular. Keir Starmer and his government has had a bumpy first year and a bit in office. So much so that there have already been a couple of news stories of his own MPs talking about who should replace him. Bad polling, a series of poor policy choices, and the fact that he was recently defeated in an attempt to get some disability cuts through Parliament has left him weak and embattled. I don't actually think he'll be chucked out of office within a year. I think he'll have at least a little bit longer than that to get on his feet. But when the time comes, whenever that is, that the Labour Party will need to choose a new leader, and if it's before 2029, the likely new Prime Minister of the UK, this is your guide. So in this video, I'll take you through the 15 likeliest people who could replace Keir Starmer. I'll go through them in order of what I deem to be their likelihood. I think that there's really two frontrunners, a series of contenders, some dark horses, and a handful of long shots. And so I'll divide this list that way. And so without further ado, let's get into it. And we'll begin with the frontrunners. Angela Rayner. Angela Rayner is the current Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, as well as Deputy Prime Minister and Secretary of State for Housing and Local Government. She is from the left wing of the party and has been someone who's been close to former leader Jeremy Corbyn and his circles. This has previously led to some friction between her and Keir Starmer, but they seem to have worked well and closely upon taking office in 2024. Rayner grew up in poverty in Stockport, speaks with a northerner accent, and is often celebrated for her strong communication with working class voters. Her housing portfolio is also an incredibly important one for a Labour government which has promised to build substantially more housing. Rayner is a strong contender. She's compelling and has a constituency of left-wing Labour supporters that will come out for her. But at the same time, her experience in government has taught her pragmatism. However, maybe left-wingers will feel betrayed by her role in the very moderate Labour government, or perhaps she'll be too far left and scare the markets or the fiscal hawks in the party. And it should be mentioned that the Labour Party has never been very keen to elect female leaders. They've actually never done it. So maybe that will make it slightly tougher for her. Wes Streeting. The other main contender is the current Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Wes Streeting. Streeting is from the centrist to the right wing of the Labour Party and is very much a Starmerite. Streeting rose the ranks of local politics before becoming an MP, where he served as a backbencher before Starmer recognised his potential. Streeting had a very easy time in the shadow cabinet, where he shadowed the same portfolio. But being in government has expectedly been difficult for him, purely because health is hard. He has struggled to bring down waiting lists and now finds himself in a dispute with the British Medical Association. However, he's also made some structural changes to the NHS, which may yet pay dividends in the months and years to come. So we will have to wait to see before casting a verdict on his tenure. Streeting will be seen as the natural heir to Starmer by the moderate wing of the party. But he's unpopular with the left of the party, and Labour members may want to take a different approach due to Starmer's unpopularity. But weak public finances and a dangerous fiscal situation may lead Labour voters to voting with their brain rather than their hearts and going for a more moderate approach. The contenders. Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham is the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He's therefore not an MP and couldn't practically serve as Labour leader or Prime Minister as of right now. He has previously served as an MP and in the cabinet of former Prime Minister Gordon Brown in both culture and health portfolios. In 2017, he traded out Westminster for the Manchester mayoralty and has become an incredibly popular and prolific force in UK politics. He is on the left, but not the Corbyn far left of the party. Instead, he finds himself on the moderate or soft left of the party, probably somewhere between the two frontrunners. He's twice before stood for party leadership, both in 2010 when he came in 4th place, eliminated in the second round, and in 2015 when he came a fairly distant 2nd place to Jeremy Corbyn. To stand for leader, he would need to be re-elected as MP, but he doesn't need to wait for 2029. He could indeed be re-elected through a by-election, and reporting suggests he's already got his eye on one seat that may be up for a by-election soon. Burnham may eventually become a compromise candidate between the two warring wings of the party. This would help him. He's also very likeable. I met him once and I can concur. But he'll have an uphill battle in terms of gaining support from the parliamentary party, and his hopes hinge on a successful by-election in the not-too-distant future. Yvette Cooper. Yvette Cooper is the current Home Secretary. She is a more moderate Labourite and has been very loyal to Keir Starmer, who brought her in from the dark after she spent the Corbyn years on the backbenches. Before that, Cooper actually served in a handful of junior ministerial roles during the Blair and Brown years and stood for leadership herself in 2015 when she ended in 3rd place behind Corbyn and Burnham. In her portfolio as Home Secretary, Cooper has cemented her name recognition, which would undoubtedly help her in the coming leadership contest. However, her time in position has not been all rosy. Far from it. The government's handling of the Southport stabbing and the following riots of last summer will be a massive hindrance to her. So will the fact that many left-wingers in the party will find her approach and rhetoric on illegal immigration too aggressive. And the same left-wingers will also be angry with her push to have the protest group Palestine Action prescribed to the terrorist list. But if there is a continued majority for a more moderate choice, Cooper will be one of the top contenders, behind perhaps only Wes Streeting. Lisa Nandy. Lisa Nandy is the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. She is someone from the Labour middle ground. She's not part of the Corbynist left, but also not as moderate as Starmer and his closest allies. In many ways, I think she occupies the same part of the ideological wing of the party as Andy Burnham. Nandy has had topsy-turvy relations with both Starmer and his predecessor Corbyn. She served in Corbyn's shadow cabinet, but resigned in protest of his leadership style. And she had initially pitched herself as Corbyn's inevitable replacement to the Labour Together think tank before it chose to more or less rebuild the Labour Party with Keir Starmer instead. She still stood in the 2020 Labour leadership contest, coming in third place behind Starmer and the Corbynite candidate Rebecca Long-Bailey. And while Nandy was initially given the very significant portfolio of foreign affairs in the shadow cabinet, she was the victim of a series of demotions. She only ended up in the cabinet last year due to the election defeat of Culture Shadow Minister Tengham Debonair. Nandy won't have an easy ride if she runs to replace Starmer. But if there is a lane between the moderates and the left-wingers, she's currently the best placed candidate who currently serves in Parliament. And that's not nothing. Clive Lewis. Clive Lewis is a backbench MP and a very prolific part of the left wing of the Labour Party. Lewis served in a series of shadow roles for Jeremy Corbyn when he was party leader, but ended up perpetually demoted. The first big demotion was from the role of Shadow Defence Secretary, where Lewis was demoted after mere months when he disagreed with the ardently anti-nuclear Jeremy Corbyn on the Trident nuclear defence systems. Lewis has been an ardent campaigner on matters of green policy, working with the Green Party of England and Wales at times, as well as an advocate for abolishing the monarchy and re-evaluating colonial legacy of the UK. He has stood for leadership once before in 2020, but failed to gain enough nominations to qualify for the final stages. But he's also been very prone to controversy. He's had to apologize for multiple profane quotes. He was seen performing a mime skit pretending to take his own life during a parliamentary session, and has been accused of sexual assault, though the party's executive committee cleared him following an investigation. Lewis would be the militant left candidate if he decided to stand. He would be able to position himself to the left of someone like Rayner, because Lewis has stayed out of government, but his abrasive ways and aggressive style would make it hard for him to find supporters in the more moderate parts of the party. The Dark Horses. Bridget Phillipson. Bridget Phillipson is the Secretary of State for Education and the Minister for Women and Equalities. If she ran in an impending leadership contest, she would be viewed as one of the Starmer continuity candidates. She's been loyal to Starmer and comes from the same moderate wing of the party. In her role at Education, Phillipson has been instrumental in developing and implementing this government's policy in a way very few other cabinet members seem to have been. The most significant policy that's been implemented so far is, of course, adding value-added tax to private schools, something that's been somewhat controversial in her own moderate wing of the party. Within her equalities brief, she's perhaps received the most attention for her role in the transgender debate and her support of the UK Supreme Court ruling that more or less stipulates that the state must treat a person in accordance with their sex at birth rather than self-identified gender. Phillipson's lane would be crowded if she were to run, and she does struggle with name recognition when compared to the other moderates in the party. However, if the Streetings and Coopers of the world were made too toxic due to their challenging portfolios, well, Phillipson's education portfolio may save her. David Lammy. David Lammy is the current Secretary of State of Foreign, Commonwealth and Developmental Affairs. He's another Labour politician who's been loyal for a longer period to Keir Starmer. He's very much on the moderate to even centre-right part of the Labour Party. So much so that a couple of years ago, he described himself as lowercase c conservative. But that's not necessarily always been his approach. He used to seem to position himself somewhere on the soft left part of the party, and especially profiled himself of issues of culture, speaking a lot about his experience as a black man on issues of justice and discrimination. Lammy does, however, have some issues on credibility. He was someone who spoke out quite aggressively against Trump when he was in opposition, and now happily goes fishing with Trump's VP. And there have been quiet questions asked about his suitability for his current position, with one rumor even circulating in the days leading up to the 2024 general election that Lammy may not be given the cabinet position despite shadowing it in opposition. If there is a moderate lane, Lammy may be able to make headwinds in it, but he and the government's support of Israel and much else will make him poisonous for the left wing of the party, and there are many moderates probably better than him, so he will struggle. Darren Jones. Darren Jones is the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, a type of second-in-command at the Exchequer. Jones first profiled himself during the last Parliament as chair of the Business and Trade Select Committee, before being brought into the shadow cabinet. He is yet another Keir Starmer loyalist who also finds himself on the moderate wing of the party. Although he's not a particularly well-known name outside of Parliament, he is someone who is often cited as a rising star due to his impressive career momentum and his performance both in the media and formally during committee. Jones would likely struggle a bit, however, to be able to profile himself during a leadership contest when there are so many bigger personalities also in the fold, and especially in that very crowded moderate lane. But I could see him being someone who would stand anyway with the intention of then becoming a truly serious candidate the following time around. And for that very reason, he is someone to keep an eye on regardless. Jess Phillps. Jess Phillps is Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, a junior ministerial position. She is someone who is placed in that soft left part of the party where she finds herself ideologically between the current leadership and the previous leadership. On the one hand, Phillips left Labour in the early 2000s to oppose Tony Blair's decision to join the United States in invading Iraq, and she also resigned from Keir Starmer's shadow government in 2023 in opposition to his pro-Israel stance. However, she seems to have patched relations with Starmer and his team since then. On the other hand, she was also one of the absolutely most vocal opponents of Jeremy Corbyn during his leadership and openly called on him to resign many times throughout his almost 5 years in post. This means that Phillips has a sort of middle lane that she could run in if she decided to stand for leader. She tried this back in 2020 but did not manage to get enough nominations to stand. But her name recognition does seem to have grown since then, predominantly through her regular appearance on the podcast Electoral Dysfunction and through her government portfolio, which, despite being a junior role, is quite forward-facing. The long shots. Ed Miliband. Ed Miliband is the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero. He's also previously served as Labour Party leader in the period of 2010 to 15. Miliband is still by far best known for his stint as party leader, a position he won in a contest against his own brother. Miliband positioned the party to the left of where it had been during the Blair-Brown years, but of course not quite as far left as his successor Jeremy Corbyn would take it. He resigned after the 2015 general election when he failed to defeat the incumbent Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron in an election that's probably best remembered for one very unfortunate photo of Miliband. After some quiet years on the backbenches, Miliband returned to the front benches when Starmer asked him to take on the energy and net zero portfolio in shadow cabinet and then later in government. In this role, Miliband has re-profiled himself quite successfully. He's proven a strong proponent of green energy, of net zero targets, and has started the process of founding GB Energy, a state-owned green energy investor. Miliband would, like others on this list, be best placed in the soft left lane in the leadership contest. I also think many people will think that he's had his chance already and that it's time for someone new. Emily Thornberry. Emily Thornberry is a backbench MP who also serves as chair on the very prestigious Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Thornberry is yet another addition to the already crowded soft left field of potential leadership candidates. She served in the shadow cabinets of Ed Miliband, Jeremy Corbyn, and Keir Starmer, giving her quite a broad base. However, she did have to resign in disgrace from the Miliband shadow cabinet for an infamously classist Twitter post deriding a house she passed for flying English flags, and when Labour won the 2024 general election, Thornberry was ruthlessly snubbed from government by Keir Starmer. With her appointment as chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, she's been able to continue being somewhere in the conversation though. And in the long run, maybe staying out of government will prove good for her career. Aside from Andy Burnham, who, I'll repeat, isn't an MP, Thornberry will be the highest profile potential leader of the soft left who can distance herself from the Starmer government. If that proves to be the flavour of the week that the post-Starmer leadership contest will crave, she's in a good position. Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant is the Minister of State for Data Protection and Telecoms, as well as Minister of State for Creative Industries, Arts and Tourism, both junior ministerial positions. Bryant is perhaps, however, best known for his role in the last Parliament as chair of the House Select Committees on Standards and Privileges. In these roles, it was especially the scandal around Owen Paterson which saw Bryant gain notoriety when it led to conflict between him and then Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Most people who are familiar with Bryant will also know him as someone who has put a lot of time and effort into looking at the workings of the Commons and how this could be amended. 2 years ago, his book, Code of Conduct, proposing some liberal and modernist approaches to changing the structure and culture of Parliament, gained a lot of attention. Bryant is yet another one of the more moderate Labour MPs on policy issues, but his views and approaches to amending the Constitution and the way that Parliament functions would give him a unique edge that other more moderate candidates may struggle to attain. However, his relatively junior roles in government and the fact that there are many much more well-known names in the moderate wing may make a leadership bid difficult for him. Shabana Mahmood. Shabana Mahmood is the Secretary of State for Justice and holds its twin title of Lord Chancellor. She is someone whose political career has been in lockstep with Starmer's and who's considered one of his very close allies. She refused to serve in Corbyn's shadow cabinet, but was quickly brought into the fold when Starmer took over. She is yet another one of the more moderate Labour MPs who plays such a significant role in the current government. While she does not have the profile of someone in the great offices of state like Rachel Reeves, Yvette Cooper, or David Lammy, she is still one of the more high-profile members of the government, and that could prove helpful in future leadership contests. However, her time in office has also been marked by controversy, especially with regard to the very aggressive crackdown on rioters last summer, including cases of people who posted incendiary comments online being arrested. And while this may cause problems for her with the right of the party, her likely crackdown on supporters of Palestine Action in the near future will cause issues for her with the Labour left. And I should note, the fact that she is a Muslim woman will play a role in any future leadership bid of hers. At a time when an anti-Islam sentiment is taking over both the UK at large and factions of the Labour Party, this may make her a poorer candidate. But at the same time, there is also a very identity politics focused wing of the party who may see her as an interesting profile to highlight. John Healey. John Healey is the Secretary of State for Defence. He has previously held several junior ministerial roles in the governments of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, and served in the shadow cabinets of both Miliband and Corbyn. While he is someone clearly of the moderate wing of the Labour Party, he's proven to be able to work positively with all factions and is not someone who's profiled himself on internal party politics. And while this approach may not be exciting to political pundits, the turbulence of the first year of the Starmer government, plus the remaining wounds from the left-right fight that took place during the years of Jeremy Corbyn, may make Labour MPs and members susceptible to this approach. But Starmer was someone who also stood for a leader on this approach, but ended up governing as a partisan, and so perhaps people, especially of the left, will be wary of the party unity candidate. But Healey could still try, and in addition to the unity angle, he could also make a very good case for himself as someone very professional and in the weeds of his portfolio, especially now that he will be responsible for a massive increase to the UK defence budget. The conclusion. And that's it. The 15 people I think are most likely to replace Keir Starmer as Labour leader and perhaps even Prime Minister. There are, of course, many others who I'm sure will see themselves as candidates. This list purposefully leaves out some pretty big names like Rachel Reeves and Sadiq Khan, both of whom I would personally really struggle to see in contention. Do you think they should have been included? Did I miss any other potential successors that you think have a good shot? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.